Review May 24th meeting to order. The first item of business, do we have to adopt prior meetings? No, nothing?
I forgot to list them, I'll do it next.
All right, we had three requests tonight. The city of Ellsworth is requesting their pumper be done. Then I have a request from Mr. French, but I can't participate, so that one's been bumped, and then you. I'm not anticipating the city's pumper to take too long, so if I can put you sort of on hold for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes?
Yes, that's fine. Please take your time. That's no problem. I'm just here working.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
may I address the board?
Absolutely, Ray. Come right up and give it to us.
My name's Raymond Williams. I live at 56 Hancock Street in Ellsworth. I question whether this is a valid meeting of the board. I first noticed the agenda for this board in the Ellsworth American 2 weeks ago, May 13th, and it says, public note, after the City of Ellsworth Board of Appeals assessment review, 1 City Hall Plaza, Ellsworth, Maine, all in big caps, and it says, public notice. The meeting of the Ellsworth Board of Appeals and assessment review on Monday, May 24, 2021, for consideration of the following requests, and then it has the agenda. There is no time mentioned in this notice that was published in the Ellsworth American. I also want to inquire what the procedure is, how many times it has to be published in the Ellsworth American, because it was published the 13th, but it wasn't published a week later on the 20th.
It only has that one.
Okay, but
No,
you need,
no more than 14 days before and no less than 7.
And on the website, our times of meeting is well known as Monday at 6:30. So.
well, I don't know about that, but I went and looked at the notice as I came in this evening that is in the bulletin board out here, and that has no time on it either. And I just question whether this is a valid meeting. We don't have to rely, for some of us, I do have to say that I do go and look occasionally, but I also look at Ellsworth American when I see issues that I have a little interest in, and I happen to notice that there was no time on this meeting. And for people that rely on the newspaper, I think this is a real hindrance to any participation of the people. So I think you first have to decide whether this is a valid meeting, and whatever you decide, then you can go forward or put it off. But I think there's
Well,
a
here's what I'm
serious
gonna do,
problem
Ray.
on the notice.
I'm gonna indicate that I think this is a valid meeting. Our board always meets at Monday at 6:30. On the website, it says Monday at 6:30. We show up Monday at 6:30. To the extent that future notices can put the time in, I would ask that the city do that. But today, we're gonna go forward, and I appreciate it, Ray.
Thank you.
Now, first item of business is the City of Ellsworth's request for a variance to replace and upgrade a sewer pump located 27 Water Street, 6-inch encroachment. I have in the record a 4-page request. If you want to come up and state your name at the podium, tell us why the city needs this, we need a record.
Thank you, sir. My name is Nate McLaughlin. I work with Woodard & Curran. We're the city's engineering firm on for the wastewater department. The work as being proposed is an upgrade to the Water Street sewer pump station. The final design of that project requires a variance from the 10-foot property line setback. So to align you to where the work is, this is the pump station that's near the corner of Main Street and Water Street.
Is it going to encroach on any neighbors' properties?
We do not encroach on the property line, sir. We exceed the 10-foot setback from the property.
So it's on the city's property?
Correct,
within the 10-foot setback? And let me ask it right to the, if this is not granted, will this screw the whole thing up?
We cannot design the project as intended with the capacity of the pumps that we need. And
So that the land in question cannot yield a reasonable return unless the variance is granted?
correct, sir.
and the need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances of the properties and not the general conditions of the neighborhood?
That is correct, sir.
And is the granted variance will not alter the essential characteristics of the neighborhood?
That is correct, sir.
And the hardship wasn't created by you or the city, it's just a design thing?
Correct, sir.
So, anything else you want to say? I'm going to make a motion that we approve the variance request. I'm going to make and add to it that we find that all the criteria for a variance is been met. Do I have a second?
Second.
Steve? Do you want to say anything about my motion?
No.
Did we have any abutters express any concerns?
Any concerns expressed?
We are in discussions, not me personally. My boss, Brent Bridges, who you've probably met in the past, has been in extensive discussions with Lori Chase about this project. I apologize off the top of my head, I don't recall the name of her business. It's Coastal Interiors, thank you, Dwight. So we are negotiating with her some aesthetic improvements around the property so that it mitigates the visual impact of that building being there. We have not heard any complaints or concerns from the abutter on the other side, which is RF Jordan.
Okay.
So are you encroaching on just one line?
We encroach on, so what would be the southwest corner? We encroach by 4 feet for a standby emergency power generator. And that is, and it appears on the north side of the property line, we have an encroachment of less than a foot. For the building, it's the new proposed building itself.
No abutter filed a written statement. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? We got engineers on this panel. You're in trouble.
Wouldn't be the first time today.
Did you get a second? Did Steve second?
I got a second, but I wanted to take a vote as soon as Steve is
Oh,
Why are you waiting for me?
just what I do, Steve.
Oh, thank you.
I had a second. I'd like to take a vote whether we approve this variance or not. All in favor? All opposed? You got your variance, to the extent that you need something in the register. I don't know, but this is the city. The city will make their own record. You're done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Yep, good day.
We'll call Brent when we get tonight.
Please do. Thank you, Dwight. Thank you all.
All right, now, is that yours, Dwight? Was that your presentation?
Yeah, that's it, I'm done.
We didn't even need you.
Well,
So,
I thought Lori would show up, that's why.
Okay. All right, Walgreens. Do we have the Walgreens dude on the screen? There he is.
Yes, I am here.
Say
Good afternoon or good evening, how are you? My name is Stavitsky, Bruce Stavitsky.
Bruce, can I interrupt you just a minute?
Walgreens.
Can I just interrupt you? I have to, the French administrative appeal has been continued. I know I have a conflict. I know another board member may have a conflict. We may have to get recruits to do this one. Okay?
It's an assessment appeal.
So, with that being said, I'm gonna now go to, the request of Walgreens for a tax abatement, present here. Lori, you gonna stay and record, or are you out of here?
Lori's out.
You are definitely not as pretty. Okay. So we're here, we have Larry Gardner for the city of Ellsworth.
Present?
We have Mr. Levitsky?
Stavitsky, Bruce Stavitsky. is my name.
Stabitsky, I'm sorry. I I should probably have to read that and see the S.
Yes, that's fine. There's no worries about that.
All right, and we're conducting this in the City Hall chambers, Ellsworth, and we've granted Zoom ability to Bruce Zabitsky to present on behalf of Walgreens. As far as our record goes, we have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-page submission. It references that letter of authority that the Herman Realty Corp. Care of Walgreens grants Bruce Zabitsky. I'm sorry, I'm butchering your name.
Say that again?
How do I say your last name again?
Stavitsky. Feel free to call me Bruce. It's
Okay. They gave Bruce permission to present, and that's who we're going to rely upon. Board members are Steve and Shay, Jared Wilbur. I can't see everybody else is reading these. Bruce, myself, and state your name.
Mike White.
Mike White and myself, Jeff Toothaker. We have 5, that's quorum, right? The burden of proof is on you, Bruce. And I'm just gonna take that we don't have to swear people in, do we? All right, so let us have it. Tell us why we should grant your request.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, this is a freestanding Walgreens store located at 226 High Street. It was built about 13 years ago. Freestanding store, very typical pharmacy. You see these throughout Maine and New England and really throughout the United States. This particular store is about 14,800 square feet, single story. It sells a variety of products, including pharmaceuticals and convenience store items as well. Usually the pharmacy footprint is pretty small. These drugstores, they tend to be about 800 to 1,000 square feet, so a very small portion of the entire store. The way I looked at it is what would market rent be for this type of store, and we turned to CoStar and obtained some market rents within the town, and they're included in the packet that we sent to you. The first document in terms of a CoStar lease or rent, if you will, is at 225 High Street, shopping center across the street. The indicated rent on that was $12 per square foot for
Bruce.
Space in there about 1,500 square feet.
Hey, Bruce, can
Yes.
I interrupt you? I want you to know that one of our board members works for the company that owns that one you're citing. Does that bother you?
No, it doesn't. That's fine.
All right. I don't want you to think that, you are referencing his stores, but I wanted you to know that up front.
No, that's perfectly all right.
Thank you.
And if there's something that I have that is not accurate in terms of what I'm testifying to, I would appreciate if that individual would point that out to me as well. Okay, so that's the first lease comp, if you will, that we have. There is another comp as well, the same property across the street. Asking rent, again, for a block of space, about 2,500 square feet. And that was the parent starting rent as well, $12 a square foot, also triple net. And then there's another lease, freestanding building at 190 Main Street in Ellsworth. Asking rent on that one is $11.75 a square foot, also triple net. And then there's another lease at 210 High Street, the AutoZone. leasing for about $7 a square foot, triple net. These are all leases within a recent time frame, market-driven leases, if you will, ranging from sign dates going back to 2018 to current January of 21. On the basis of that information, we determined that a fair economic rent for the property would be at $12 per square foot. That generates a annual potential gross income of about $178,000. We deducted from that certain factors, looking at what market vacancy is in the area that came from CoStar, that vacancy and rent loss rate of 5.2%, giving us an effective gross income of about $168,000. So even though this lease is a triple net lease, we are able to deduct certain expenses that an owner would incur. Even if it is triple net, an owner is going to manage a property. They're going to have to maintain the shell, the building. They're going to be responsible for certain items that over time would have to be replaced, such as roofs and paving. The tenant is not responsible for that. So in terms of the shell maintenance, we deducted 4% from the effective gross income. For management, we deducted 4% for that as well. These are standard industry factors that are typically applied. Replacement reserves, 30 cents a square foot. Professional fees, you'll incur accounting expenses, perhaps legal. These are also market-driven types of expenses as well. And that was a lump sum amount of $10,000. And then you'll incur broker's commissions as well when you lease up a property, if it's a market type of transaction. And that typical commission rate is about 5%. We deducted from that all those factors from EGI, and we arrived at a net operating income of about $132,000. We applied a capitalization rate, basically putting the net income into a value stream. So the formula is the income divided by the cap rate would give you what the indicated assessment should be, and that is $1,717,000 in terms of a value. We relied just on that approach to value. I know there are two others as well. The cost approach, which I know the assessor has utilized, which I can comment after the assessor's presentation, assuming that the assessor will present that. I also did my own cost workup, if you will, after receiving that. I have not submitted it because it was out of time, but I'm certainly able to comment on how the assessor derived his cost and how he went about it. And the third approach to the value is a sales comparison approach. I did not uncover any sales very much like this property in the town. Obviously, there are sales throughout New England, pharmacy-type properties that are leased. The subject property is leased. There are sales that are well above $3 million for those types of properties, but they don't reflect market value of the real property. They reflect the credit rating of a tenant. That's the driver here. And that data is actually contained in the information that the assessor provided. You know, that material that he extracted from different publication sources talks about that, talks about credit rating of drugstores, talks about 25-year lease terms. I would be interested in hearing from the gentleman who is involved with working for the ownership of the property across the street from the subject about whether or not they're signing their tenants to 25-year leases. Maybe they are, but I would be surprised if they are. And actually, these leases are more equivalent to 75-year leases because they're for a 75-year term. Walgreens has the option to opt out of the lease after 25 years and can do so if they so desire. But the fact that you've got a lease of a retail property with a minimum term of 25 years and perhaps as much as 75 years at a flat rental term, to me indicates that, hey, we're not talking about a lease of say, bricks and mortar real estate. We're talking about the lease. Actually, it's not even a lease. It's more like a corporate bond. And that is the information that the assessor put in his packet. The author of the material that the assessor extracted talks about the leases being essentially like corporate bonds. So if anyone is interested in clipping coupons, one good way to clip coupons and realize a return on investment based on credit rating is to purchase one of these Walgreens type properties. In fact, the driver of many of these Walgreens transactions seems to be in the context of the IRS Section 1031 exchange. A lot of the data that the assessor provided in the footnote references that these triple net services are providing these drugstore offerings on the market in the context of a Section 1031 exchange. And as you know, the 1031 exchange is basically meant or designed to defer income taxes. And that really is a driver for many of these transactions to occur. Credit rating, deferral of federal taxes, and also too, in terms of the origin of these properties, there's a certain, I guess the best way to describe it is a certain, influence or maybe even a taint in terms of what accounts for these high rents. The rents don't reflect market. The rents are reflective of other factors, such as the company's credit rating, such as the fact that the company will often overpay for a certain site. They may have to remove an ongoing business. They may have to demolish something that's existing. And all these kinds of costs and issues and factors are rolled into what rent is paid to the property developer. And Walgreens doesn't have the construction cost information because they don't build these buildings. The property developer builds the buildings for them. So to suggest that Walgreens is refusing to turn it over is I guess, misnomer. It's misleading because they don't have that data. They don't have it for purposes of depreciation because they don't take depreciation on a building that they don't own.
Can I ask you a question? How did you get the figure $701,137 for the land value?
That was based on a land sale, and it might even be overstated in terms of that 731. Let me find that.
Well, let me cut to the chase. The city says the land's worth $1.322900, and you say we should assess it at $701,137. How do we get that number, $701,137?
Yes, let me please answer the question. $731,000 divided by 2.22 acres is equivalent to $329,000 per acre. There was a land sale at 377 High Street, I believe at the end of last year, or the beginning part of this year. Let's see. It sold in March of 21. It was under contract, as I understand it, at the end of 2020 for $188,302 per acre. Now I realize that 377 High Street is about a mile from the subject. It's in an area that's not as fully developed as the subject is, but if you adjust a sale, you can use a sale. So I felt that, well, that sale should be adjusted to reflect the fact that the subject property is in a better location, more highly trafficked, and was deserving of a higher number. So that's how I arrived at that number. But that doesn't really factor into anything because we took the position based on the assessment that we should look at market rent. If I was doing a cost approach to value, yes, sure, I would consider that number. And my cost approach number, although you don't have it in front of you, is probably a little bit higher than the number that I have pursuant to looking at economic rent. And that's very commonplace. Cost approach typically generates a value that's higher than what true market value is. I hope I answered your question, sir.
You did, and then as far as the building, the city has 1.984,400, almost $2 million value in the building, and you're asking us to go down to $1,015,000. How did you get that number?
Well, that was for the purpose of essentially allocating a number for this. As you can see, our total ties into what we felt the property was based on our pro forma, okay? Our pro forma is showing an indicated assessment of $1,717,000. So we essentially allocated it. We felt there would be more value associated with the building than the land. As I said, I made an adjustment to the land sale, concluded 701 for that. If the total is 1,717,000, the math would then indicate that the value for the improvement should be slightly above $1 million.
Okay. That Walgreens is quite busy. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I'm sure that's very good, but are you valuing their business? Or are you valuing their real estate? It cuts both ways. If that store were dark, a closed store, and I came into you and I said, this store is dark, it's not busy at all, please reduce the assessment, I don't think you'd want to hear from me about that. Likewise, I think to say that the store is busy, that's good for Walgreens business, but to me, it has nothing to do, no influence, no effect on what the market value of the real estate should be.
Okay. Are you ready for questions, or do you have anything else you'd like to tell us?
I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Board members, any questions for this gentleman?
You mentioned that they, because they're leasing the building, that they didn't have the tax information because someone else was leasing it to them, and they built the building and they're paying the tax based
Rent.
on, yeah. But they're responsible for the tax.
They pay the taxes, that's correct. They're the net tenant. Walgreens is a net tenant.
Yeah, and they've been there for years, but they never, when the building was being built, that's public knowledge, they never went in to see what it was being assessed at by the town?
I have no idea. I only began representing Walgreens on this property, I guess it was the end of last year or beginning of this year. So I don't know what occurred before, sir.
But again, it would be public knowledge if they knew they were responsible for the tax and they could have walked in and talked to Larry or whoever to see what the taxable amount was.
I have no idea what Walgreens did before me in connection with this property. No idea.
You stated
Other than what- other
that
than-
they didn't know what the tax was because they weren't building the building
No, I said they didn't know what the cost was.
of the tax.
No, the cost.
Well,
of
the
construction.
the cost is, again, using the cost approach. Whenever you fill out a permit and stuff, it's public knowledge. They easily could have looked into that.
I was responding to what the assessor raised in his submission. He was saying that Walgreens has refused to provide the construction costs. And I said that, well, if they didn't build the building, they wouldn't know what the construction cost was. So
Right, but it's public
I-
knowledge. They could have went in and looked at the permit and there'd been an estimate on the permit.
Right, but no one has asked me to this point in time, maybe it's in the assessor's demand for information, the 706, I don't know, for construction costs. If Walgreens doesn't have construction costs, then how can I provide that? I suppose then what I would do is I would direct the assessor to the permit that he submitted in his presentation and say, this is what's on file, assessor. Please, this is to respond to your question about construction costs. Because Walgreens doesn't have that information because they didn't build the building.
It was built for them though, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What did you say you thought the land value was per acre?
About $329,000.
That's what you thought it was, should be, or is what it is?
Oh, no, that's what I think it would be fair. Right now, the value that the assessor has on it per acre is about a little shy of $600,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? And Bruce, is there anything else you want to say? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Larry where he got his numbers, and then obviously you'll get a response to that, okay?
No, the only other thing I want to say is thank you very much for having this set up via Zoom, permitting me to testify this way. If necessary, if you were requiring us to be there in person, I would have come, or one of our other employees would have come to testify today. But I do appreciate the opportunity to present to you, and thank you for doing it in this virtual format.
We are modern and we have electricity up here. Larry, tell us how you got your figures.
Yes, I'd first like to say hello to Bruce.
Hi, Larry.
I've worked with Bruce on another property here in town, and I met him once in Augusta, so it's good to see you again.
Same here.
Without a mask.
Where's the 1.322 come from? Doesn't that seem a little high for the land value?
Well, if you look at recent sales of property, like the across from where Burger King is, that new plaza, that was a sale that was most recent for like 1.2 million.
For the land and building?
Yeah, and they tore the building, there's a car dealership, and they tore that down. And there's other sales similar to that give you information about what the sale price is, sell prices are here in Ellsworth, but then you do have to kind of feather it in to where this location is, and it would be perhaps, I'm saying one of the highest price locations here in the city of Ellsworth.
Was Harmon's got good price, good property?
Harmon?
Yeah, is he taxed this high?
I don't think Harmon is. No.
That's your neighbor.
Yeah, but across the street, when we looked at, Bruce was talking about rents. I was gonna say COVID. It's Convenient, MD. It has a lease in the 30s, I think mid-30s for that. Aroma Joe's a little tiny coffee shop that has a lease rate of $54 a square foot. The average, if you looked at, and we went through this with a previous appeals case, the average retail for an average, it's almost like a secondary, it's not a primary on its own location, but these secondary locations here in the city, those will run around $10 to $12 a square foot. But if you get a property that's better than that in a better location, you're gonna get into the higher rents per square foot. And my rent for this property was in the low 20s, market rent for this property. I also want to point out that the original sale price, and I think I sent this as part of the packet, was $7.575 million. This was back in 2009,
How much did that, was that just this property?
just this property.
And what was there? It was,
Well, this is after they built Walgreens. Walgreens owned it, and they sold it to, actually it was GP Ellsworth LLC that built it for Walgreens, and they sold it to Harmony Realty Company in 2009 for $7.575 million. And of course, that was via a sale leaseback. And so that 7.57 is not a market value that assessors would recognize, even though it says right on it, purchase price, and this is the transfer tax document, but we don't recognize those properties like Walgreens and some of the other properties like Walgreens that when because they'll build it and they'll have a construction cost, and then they sell it and then lease back. It's called a sale lease back. So those sell prices are way above what the brick and mortar land and building value would be worth.
they're making money.
Yeah, so 7.5 million versus, we have 3.3 million on it. And we've had that since it was built. The building permit, I think, was 1.7 million to construct, and that was primarily when you get your building permit, there's no big breakdown of cost you have to provide to the code enforcement
Well, I'm gonna
officer.
cut right to the chase. Is 1.322 equivalent and equal to other land values in the area per acre?
It is for that location, yes.
All right, I mean, we just recently did the assessment on our mall out there, and we saw some numbers there, and I can remember bantering and that, but then you mentioned the car dealership down the road that got wrecked. That was a 1.3 with 3 acres
Yeah.
for just the land.
Even Darlings, when they were downtown where Dairy Queen is now,
Yeah.
that was a big sale there too. Goodwill, all the old car dealerships we used to have here in town, they all sold for about 1.2 million, which is basically land value because they tore down the buildings.
Is that, so per acre, what's the average sales in the city of Ellsworth in that area per acre? What's it running average?
If you're looking at the whole area, then you're looking a little less than 400,000 an acre.
Okay, so you've got 600,000 an acre on this one.
Yeah, because this is right in the heart of everything.
And his point that you're high because you're high.
It's the location.
Okay, what about the motel behind it? What do we got for value on that for the city per acre?
I'm not sure, I don't have that.
Okay, and how about,
Land value of 1.188,200, and it's 3 acres.
so comparable. How about Harmon's next door?
I need a laptop, a tablet.
Well, what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to figure out where you're getting your number for, of 1.322 for the land, and if it's based on comparisons to other properties, and we're in the ballpark, then,
How many acres do they have, Larry?
2.8.
2.8,
2.22,
2.2, what's the land value you've got it at?
1.3.
1.3 million?
And also, if I may, that there was a tax abatement request in 2017, and I've provided what was at that time a cost approach evaluation by Walgreens, Harmony Realty Corporation, and in that cost approach they used the assessment for land. They didn't adjust that at all.
so they've accepted it in the past.
In the past, just 3 years ago, they accepted that, but they did their own cost factoring for the building value, even though you would think probably someone at Walgreens would have information about the true cost of
Yeah.
building the property.
What do they care? They're just gonna pay a big net lease and somebody's gonna make money. But the 1.984, 1,984,400 for the building, what is that based on?
It's based on the cost to build, minus depreciation. And in the packet, I presented my adjusted, reconstructed price ladder of, compared to Walgreens' 2017 price, using the Marshall Swift pricing manual. Marshall Swift for appraising is like the Bible for real estate appraisers, especially commercial real estate appraisers. They all go to Marshall Swift. And one of there were several things with that cost approach that were incorrect, that I have pointed out in my reconstruction. And one of the biggest things was, this is a drugstore, it's Walgreens, and it was being priced as if it were like a secondary tier retail building, which it clearly isn't. And the cost to build a Walgreens is a lot more than your average retail building. And
So what's right with your assessment? Next one I'll ask, what's right with it, and then I'm gonna ask you, what's wrong with it?
I don't see that there's anything wrong with it, but there's also, when you look at that cost, that there was that cost sheet that Walgreens provided in 2017, and they using the land value, which was the assessed value for land of 1.3 million. They came to a total of almost 2.9 total value, 2.89 is to be exact. But they did not include several things which would have got the price up to 3.3 million, which is exactly what it's assessed at. Bruce is a great guy, he's a great lawyer, but he's not a real estate appraiser.
We're not gonna knock lawyers here.
Feel free.
And it would be great to have a real estate appraisal that would be able to understand these things and put them down in their request for a tax abatement. I have asked for several things. I always do, right, Bruce?
Yes,
When,
very much so.
and, but here, because I was doing so many other things, the questions, it's, the assessor can ask questions, and by law, it's called, the law is 706-A. If the owner requesting a tax abatement doesn't answer those questions, doesn't respond properly to those questions, refuses or neglects to answer the assessor's questions, the applicant is barred from appeal. But I sent my questions out 3 days later than I
Well,
wanted to.
look, we're not gonna get into whether you can appeal or not. I'll tell you this. I understand you asked him for construction costs. He gave a very understandable answer. We didn't build the damn thing, how would we know, right? So let's not get into that. I wanna know how you got your 1.3 land value and 1.9 building value. That's the question I'm focused on. Just like I was focused on how does Bruce get 700,000 and $1 million for the building. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cut you off, and I'm gonna let Bruce respond to what he said and tell us why he's not right, because we on this board like to pick on Larry. I will tell you that. He's usually pretty good, but he's not perfect. So what's wrong with Larry's analysis here, please?
Right, and I'm not perfect either, but, and I have been doing this for a very long time, and even though I am not a property appraiser, certified, licensed appraiser, for the past 38 years, since I've been in the property tax appeal business, this is all I do, is tax appeals since 1983. I have read hundreds, maybe thousands of real estate appraisal reports. I have tried many cases in many kinds of courts and state boards across the United States. And so I know value to some degree. I'm not pretending. I know what the assessor knows in terms of the detail of the car dealership across the street or behind the building being sold recently for whatever the amount was. I don't have that kind of access to that data that you would when you've got your feet there on the ground. But I have taken seminars through the valuation service that Larry referenced. I'm holding it up, Marshall Valuation Service. This is that so-called Bible that Larry was referring to. And what Larry sought to do, I think, and I think this is where he went wrong to some degree, is in his presentation, he took the 2008 costs and sought to trend them up. What I did was I went to the book and I took the 2020 costs, and there are multipliers that would let you trend up as well to current date, because as soon as it's put out, it's kind of obsolete in a sense in terms of the cost to build. And I categorized it not as an average, and I think Larry was generous in categorizing it as an average drugstore. I went to the drugstore classification and I categorized it as good. Good has the characteristics of a mini drive-through, for example. And that cost new was $131 per square foot. And to that I added the sprinklers, and to that I applied the height multiplier and the perimeter adjustment and the local multiplier and the current cost multiplier and the extreme. Although I didn't cost it out to the same degree that Larry did. I think his ad was about $3.80 a square foot for that. And the reason why is because there's a certain base cost that's associated with the HVAC. And so in a way, you're kind of double dipping if you added as much as $3.80 a square foot. My ad was like $2.25 a square foot, I believe. And I came up with basically my replacement costs new of 2.1 million rounded. And then I actually depreciated that, not by 20%, again, being generous on Larry's part. I did it based on the aged life methodology, and these things have I believe, a forecasted life of 35 years according to the manual. I used the chart from the manual, and instead of giving it 20% depreciation, I gave it 16, and I came up with a replacement cost new of $1,763,357, and then if you add the land value based on the adjustment I made, that's 2.5 million. As I said, my cost approach was higher than running it through my leases or through the income approach. Most market participants are not going to buy a property. Most investors are not going to buy it based on cost. They're going to buy it based on what the potential income is in the marketplace, and also to what other like buildings might sell for. So based on that approach, I was in a rounded value of about 2.5 million, and that's without including the improvements to the site. Larry attributed, and I have no argument with this, site improvements, maybe some paving, some lighting, something like that. That kind of improvement loses value as soon as you put it down. And I think his number was around 50,000. I have no quarrel with that. I'd even round it up to 100 and come in at 2.6 on a cost approach. I will note that Walgreens this year had me look at all their other stores in Maine, and I think your location, or this town's assessment, is the highest in the entire state. There was only one other appeal I filed for Walgreens in Maine. I only did two. Ellsworth one, and the other one was Wyndham. And we ended up resolving that appeal. The assessor lowered it, or the board lowered it. And I'm not appealing that to the state board. I think their adjustment was fair. So, in any event, based on a cost, like I said, I'm probably coming in around 2.6, and based on the property's income market rent, 1.7. I think in response to what Larry said about the leases and the high rents, the convenient MD, and then the coffee shop, I'm not surprised. These built-to-suit stores, if that's what they were, and I don't know for a fact that they are typically very high leases, very high rental amounts, because they're not exposed to the market. This Walgreens building wasn't built on spec. It was built for Walgreens. No one else had the opportunity to bid on it or to attempt to lease it. It was a closed transaction, not exposed to the market. So I think that might be what differentiates a Walgreens property and a convenient MD or a Roma Joe's maybe from a more generic retail type property. And again, the question is, are you appraising the real estate, or are you appraising the occupant? And I think if you appraise the real estate, the value should be lower than 3.3 million. If you appraise the occupant, well, then you have a real basis for your assessment. But I don't think that's what valuation of real estate is for assessment purposes. I think it's about fee simple. I think it's about the market. And if you appraise it like that, then the value should come down a little bit.
Larry,
Can I ask Bruce a question?
you guys, listen, we're here to gather information, however you want your presentation. If he wants to answer your question, go for it.
Okay,
Yes.
Bruce, may I ask you, have you seen the lease between?
Yes.
Yep, and
Yes.
do you know what the square footage lease price is?
they pay. It's a crazy lease because, again, built to suit, no broker. There's a clause in the lease, no broker, okay? No, this is a non-arm's length transaction between the developer and Walgreens. Walgreens selects the developer, says to them, you build it, I don't care what it costs. Your costs are recouped in your rental payment, which you're gonna get for up to 75 years. The rent is $530,000 a year, so do the math. That's about $36 a square foot. Signed in 2008 at the height of the market before the economic collapse. And that project was on the drawing board probably going back to 2005 or 2006. So all that data was negotiated when, if you look at the broader market, was go, go, go. It was escalating, you know? And
I might add that with my income approach, I'm just in the low 20s.
Yes.
For a price per square foot rent.
yes,
Which is higher than the average $10 a square foot rent, but this is not the average location or the average building. And I'm not appraising the user of the building. I'm looking at what it should rent for on the market for that location, for that particular building. So I'm not saying that only Walgreens would be at a little over $20 a square foot rent. I'm saying anybody who rents there would pay that amount.
right. So while you were testifying earlier, Larry, I actually ran your number. I used 20, okay? And I used the same parameters that I had in my submission. I deducted the 5.2% for vacancy in the market. I deducted the 4% for shell maintenance, 4% for management, replacement reserves, professional, brokers' commissions, and so on, and used a 7.7 cap, and I came up with 2.9 million as a value.
2.9,
2.9, yeah.
your income approach?
Using your rent, but using the rest of my parameters. Using 20 a foot.
Okay.
Any other
No.
comments that either one of, Bruce, do you want to add anything?
Well, all I would say is this. I think that, I know this is a hearing, it's not a, settlement negotiation. I'm not interested in taking this case to the Maine State Board of Review, but I will, because I have, and I have done other matters there. If we can resolve this at a number below 3 million, that would be a fair number that I would take back to Walgreens, that I would say, I think you should consider this,
Well, here's what I'm gonna do. Larry, are you in a negotiating mood? I do this frequently on these appeals. I kick you out into the hallway and say, come back and resolve it like the big boys do. And we've done that many times here. We did it most recently in Shaw's Supermarket. That one was hotly contested. You probably would have won. But they resolved it. Do you guys want to talk some?
Actually, I don't see where there's any
No wiggle room?
shift for me. It's this value's been on there since the beginning. And there's been an ample number of years for Walgreens, who does pay the property tax, to say, hey, cut this back, here's some information, lower the assessed value so we don't have to pay as much tax.
Well, look, listen, our job is simple. Find out where you got your numbers and find out if Larry screwed up. And if Larry screwed up, we adjust it. So, anybody else have anything they want to add? If you're not interested in negotiating, we're going to end it right here. Bruce, do you have anything you want to add? sir?
No, I have nothing further to add. I just thank you for your time. I thank you very much.
I'm going to ask the board members, are there any questions of either Mr. Bruce or Larry? Any questions of either presenter?
So to be clear, Walgreens leases this building off from your client,
That is correct.
and you
They
told, and
lease-
you told me, or you told us that per square foot price they're paying is in excess of $30 a square foot.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Does anyone want to make a comment about, go ahead, Steve. You got your hand up.
No, I'm scratching my head, I just.
See, you know, if we were at
I just
an
picked
auction,
the
that'd have been
check
a
up,
bid
right?
right there.
I got it right, I got his body right there.
Any other comments? Go ahead, any comments? Bruce?
I can't see anything that Larry's assessment is completely out of line to make changes in it, so.
You have any comments you want to make?
No, I mean, they're leasing it for $500,000 a year. I mean,
Sir, any comments? Steve, any more comments? Our job is to listen to both of yous guys. And we take it in, and the actual standard is Larry's method so out of line. This is putting it in English that we feel compelled to change the numbers. Bruce, great presentation. I look forward to seeing you again. I'm sure we will. But in this particular case, I have to disagree with you. My personal opinion is Larry's assessment of the land is within the realm of what everybody else is being assessed at around that area. It could be a little lower, 600,000 seems high, but then again, we didn't hear any presentation of.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, it's all, and then the building, 1.9, my initial redaction was that's high, but when I hear what is being paid and what construction costs are, it's within our, what I would consider our realm of margin of errors for Larry. And I just don't think that the appellant has carried the burden of showing that Larry's assessment is substantially overvalued and an injustice would result, and I would vote to deny the appeal. Shall I make a motion? Based on my comments, I move that we deny the appeal. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Steve, are you opposing? Are you in
No, I
favor?
made the second, I thought it was.
Okay, okay, all right. That ends us. Bruce, we understand you have other options available. We don't take those into consideration. In fact, we encourage the parties to try to work these out, even if it happens on a night when we're having the hearing. It's happened. Larry's been really reasonable in some, and he's held his ground on others. And, you know, we've whacked him in some, and we know his work. And we've not hesitated to lower some when we felt it would be lowered. And he has negotiated well for the city, I can tell you that, in most cases. Thank you,
That's
Bruce,
great.
nice to meet you.
Same here. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Do
your
I
time.
have to put something in writing?
Talk to you later, Bruce.
All right, Larry.
Do I have to put something in writing for this?
Findings of fact,
Yeah, I'll try to do that next day too.
and then, was it usually Steve that does that as the secretary?
No, I'll do it, and then I submit it. All right, thank you all.
Going to adjourn?
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
I